Okay, it looks like it's actually working. We'll cut out the offensive part about things sucking, and we'll make things a little bit more professional. I hope everybody's ready. If this is your first time here, welcome to the Startup Tank Climate Investor Pitch Show, where we have the world's top climate founders on to pitch super inspiring and experienced climate and impact VCs looking to fund world-changing companies. That's actually what we do at Forward VC, our early stage climate syndicate focused on pre-seed and seed stage climate and impact companies that move the world forward. To learn more about us, you can visit forward.vc. And as a little bit of a humble brag, I'm incredibly excited because we're doing our largest syndicated deal to date. Should be closing very soon, fingers crossed. I can't share too many details unless you're an accredited member, part of our syndicate. And if you wanted to learn more about that, again, forward.vc/syndicate. And the Startup Tank, we've been doing this for a while now, featuring incredible companies. And we've got 5 incredible companies planned for you guys. Before we jump into it, though, I want to thank today's presenting show sponsor and the presenting show sponsor of all of season 1, Leva. I met these guys here in Zurich. They run an incredible digital SPV service, essentially building the venture backbone for Europe. So you can quickly, easily set up an SPV. Takes 5 minutes. You can invite 5 investors or 5 million, and all of the fees, all of the logistics, everything is handled digitally as opposed to with lawyers, which means it's fast, easy, cheap, and efficient. If you want to learn more, visit Forward, so the number 4, ward.vc/Leva for more details and to set up your, I think, free or discounted SPV. You'll have to talk to them and tell them Matt sent you. But now it's time to get on with the Startup Tank because we've got some incredible companies here to present. Before we jump into the companies, though, let's get a little bit of a background on our investors. So today, I'm joined by 2 top-notch investors. So we have Kostas Vareras from Extantia and Nadav Steinmetz from Nomea. And part of what I do here is get the names horribly wrong because that's just how it goes. It's tough to do, but thank you guys for coming on. And instead of butchering an intro, I'll let you guys say a little bit more about you, your funds, what you're focused on, and why you're excited to be here. You want to go first, Kostas?
For sure. So great to be here. My name is Kostas, originally coming from Greece, based in Berlin, working with Extantia Capital. And my background is in mathematics, so relatively technical operations research. I spent quite some time in management consulting with BCG, working on a number of different interesting projects. Then moved on to working with startups for some time before jumping on the investment side of tech. And maybe I can tell you quickly about Extantia for those that you don't know. Extantia is a decarbonization fund. We are investing in any company that has a significant potential to reduce CO2 emissions. We're typically focusing much more on hardware companies, though not exclusively. Software companies, when they can act as a great enabler for carbon emission reduction. It's something that we're very excited about. But most of our companies, some examples are companies in hydrogen production, companies in steel technologies, companies in e-fuels. So a number of different important levers for climate change.
Incredible track record to boot. You guys have a great reputation, which is why you're here. And Nadav, do you wanna take us away and tell us a little bit more about Nomea?
Good, with pleasure. So first of all, congratulations, Matt, for the deal that you're going to announce. I'm very happy to be here and thanks for having me. I think the fact, before I introduce myself, the fact that we have a startup tank dedicated to climate, I think is extremely important to advance innovation and attract additional capital into climate. A little bit about myself. I'm Nadav Steinmetz. I'm a climate tech investor. My background is mostly in financial services, private equity, and venture capital. I've worked at a bunch of places. One of them is Blackstone. Almost 2 years ago, we decided to focus all of our energy, time, and resources into climate. There is about 2 reasons for this. First of all, we don't think we have any choice. So if we want to reach net zero and protect our planet. And second of all, we also see a huge economic opportunity. And we believe we can generate very strong returns We've launched Nomea, a European climate tech fund where we invest in breakthrough climate technologies that accelerate the world's transition to net zero emissions. We're flexible capital, so we do both early and late stage. In the early stage, we look to partner and invest in early stage founders, and we help them scale into successful and impactful enterprises. We're sector agnostic within the climate space. So like other investors, there's areas that we know better and are more bullish on. I'm happy to elaborate this later on as we talk to the founders. We take pride in being a very flat organization. So we try to be as helpful as possible and add value in every step of the way, from marketing, business development, fundraising, obviously, to strategy and product, and et cetera, and et cetera. We're based in London, and we mostly focus on Europe, UK, and Israel.
That pretty much makes both of us. We had North America as well for Forward VC. Again, if you guys want to learn more, forward.vc for more details. Feels great to have your name in the title, but we like to invest in companies that move the world forward. And all five of these companies are doing absolutely that. So now, without further ado, I want to hand things over to the founders. We randomized the order to keep things fair. And because of that, we're going to hand things over first to Angela with Tyra Foods. Tyra is a graduate of the Carbon 13 program out of the UK, and they're doing pretty incredible stuff when it comes to alternative protein, alternative foods. So you should be able to share your screen and take things away, Angela.
Thanks very much, Matt. Trust everybody can hear me okay? Quick thumbs up.
Thumbs up. And just for a note for everyone, you'll have 5 minutes on the clock for every startup, and starting now.
Okay. Well, hello, everybody. I'm one of two co-founders for Tyra Foods, which is feeding the planet with carbon negative ingredients. My co-founder is actually in Mexico at the moment, and I'll explain why as we progress. So we've all seen how events in Ukraine have really shown some of the issues with our food security supply. But if you also add to that the fact that many businesses are signing up to net zero and they don't know how they're going to get there, and there's a massive growth in customers wanting sustainable products, you can see there's a real opportunity. But there's also an incredible need. At the moment, 75% of our food is coming from an incredibly small portfolio of plants and animals. So there's some 300,000 plants we could be eating, and yet we're driving this terrible monoculture farming, which is so destructive to the planet. So this is where Tyra Foods comes in. We're developing superfood carbon negative ingredients. And we do this by growing underused plants, working with leading scientists and food innovators to develop those plants into scalable, high quality ingredients that can then be used by food manufacturers within their supply chains. So examples would be flour, culinary oils, those sorts of things. And the key thing is that we're growing those plants in a holistic, regenerative way in Central America, which means that we have clear provenance and can give those B2B suppliers full transparency on where the food came from. So what do we do? Well, effectively, our R&D is about creating those recipes that enable those food manufacturers to scale up. But the key thing is that we're working with those local communities, which is very hard for those food manufacturers to do. So we're working directly with communities who are wild harvesting and also who are growing the produce for us. So this is our beachhead product, Ramon flour. The Ramon seed grows on a tree called Brosimum malacastrum. So the great thing is when you harvest the seed, the tree stays in the ground capturing carbon. We've developed a flour which is scalable and can be used across a number of products. And we've got a customer pipeline, all of those customers along the bottom we've spoken to. We're actually launching this autumn with some cookies with this customer, Senor Natural. They have nationwide distribution in Mexico and are launching their first product. We're using our Ramon in the next couple of months. Sorry, I've got a slight hiccup on my slides. Here we go. But there's a wider distribution opportunity here as well, because we're not just producing flour. There's such a pipeline of produce we can do using our regenerative practices. So, for example, the Ramon seed, we're also developing as a protein concentrate, which has a massive market, as you'll be aware. And because agroforestry comprises a number of different plants growing alongside each other, we're also looking at other products, such as the kahuna tree, which has a seed, which we're developing for oil, and similarly chaya, which is tree spinach. And we're working on a predictive model that enables us to pre-select and identify plants for growing and for optimization, which effectively means that we can start to develop some real IP. So we've got the flour already developed, as I said, and we're about to launch. We've got the ugly protein prototype through the laboratories, and we're at the next phase of working on the protein. And we're already doing the initial work in terms of extracting the oil and the chia, and there's more products to come. We've got scientists here in the UK and also working with a number of bodies in Mexico, including FICA and CC, who can help us lead on that. And in terms of scaling our supply, well, as everybody points out, nature tends to work at a certain pace. So we're wild harvesting with communities who already source the Ramon at the moment, but we've also got some land underway. We're doing agroforestry pilots, and we're developing a Tyra Charter, which sets out how we're then going to scale up and work with larger landowners. So in reality, the scaling looks like this. We already have a partnership in place with Lush, the cosmetics company. We're working on their plantation in Guatemala. We've got our own pilot site in Guatemala, and we're working with Dr. Bronner's, the cosmetics company. We'll scale by working with larger organizations. So for example, the TNC have huge swathes of land that they want to commercialize, but they need to find ways of doing that, and they're talking to us. And then the really big scaling comes from actually working with some of our customers, because to ensure security of supply, they're open to talking about how they help support working with larger land partners. And this is the opportunity. As we scale at that kind of pace, you can see that we're forecasting a $230 billion business by year 10, with hoping to exit around year 8. We've done our pre-seed. We raised 300,000 earlier in the year, and now we're embarking on our seed raise. The ask is for $2 million US. You can see there's a hefty chunk of R&D in there. That's because of all the innovation and all of that product pipeline we're talking about. But also there's a lot of operational, because we have a customer and we need to get that flour out of the door for them. And this is the team. So Marcela, I mentioned, is in Mexico at the moment. She's literally with the customers this afternoon. She is a food entrepreneur and has previously worked at Unilever.
Hope your time is up. I am sorry to have to cut you off, Angela.
No problem at all. My apologies for overrunning slightly.
No worries. You almost got it. It was a great pitch. Thank you for sharing everything about Tyra Foods. Now I want to hand things over to our other investors, and let's see if they have any questions. And I have quite a few for you as well, because our syndicate's actually very interested in what you guys are doing. But first, Nadav or Kostas, do you have any questions for Angela and Tyra?
Good. I mean, I'd be happy to go first. So Angela, thank you for the presentation. It was very interesting. So before I ask some questions, you were part of cohort 1 at Carbon 13 or 2?
Mm-hmm.
1.
Well, sorry, I couldn't quite hear. Yes, but we were cohort 1. Yes.
Okay.
We were one of the first 8 teams that got through. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So I think you were getting there, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about you. I mean, and your background and how you got to Tyra Foods. I think that was the last slide, but I'd be happy to hear a little bit more of the background.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, yes, cut off in my prime. So Marcela, as I said, she's got a lot of extensive background in the food sector. I'm more of a product and business strategist. So I've spent a career helping businesses launch and develop new products and services. I've done that at a commercial level. I've worked with organizations like Burberry and Macmillan, but I've also worked with a number of smaller organizations. I'm actually a co-founder of another startup called Work for Good here in the UK. And I'm an advisor to a number of others. And as you're familiar with Carbon 13, you'll know that the premise is it brings together talent and skills from different backgrounds. So I'm a bit of an obsessive nature buff anyway, and Marcelo and I gravitated towards each other on Carbon 13 because we both wanted to do nature-based solutions. That was our thing. And so I don't know how familiar you are with cohort 1, but we're probably the most nature-based solution that kind of got through the first round. Does that answer? Is there anything else I can?
No, thank you.
Just to quickly double click on that answer. Did you say you're a co-founder currently of another company as well?
Sorry, well, I was co-founder. I'm still a friend. Work for Good still going, but I've stepped back from that. They've now got a proper team in place, and so I've kind of stepped away from it. So it's called Work for Good. It's a platform for charitable giving in the SME sector.
Understood.
If I can ask a question, of course, you mentioned the regenerative agricultural practices. How do you validate that in practice?
So there's a number of methods for that. So we have one of our consultants is Ryan Zinn. He's the regenerative agroforestry lead for Dr. Bronner's, and he's actually on the team. And we're looking at, in addition to obviously understanding a lot about agroforestry, we're actually going to be going for, I don't know if you've heard of regenerative organic. It's a new method of accreditation. It's sort of aspiring to be the fair trade, but absolutely speaks to the regen organic piece. And he's helping us get ourselves set up for that.
Great, thank you.
And one thing I was wondering is you have this huge product pipeline. How do you focus when you have a lot of different businesses and business models and partners and partnerships and locations you have to work with? Why do that versus focus on nailing one product and then doing things in series as opposed to parallel?
Well, in many ways, we are actually focusing. So to my point, the product we're working on right now is flour, and we have actually chosen consciously to only work with one customer. And we often get pushed on that from investors because naturally, when you've had a conversation with Nestle, everybody's saying you want to be there. But we have to scale. We have to scale our production and supply, and we want to do this intelligently and strategically. So we are absolutely focusing in on one product. But the point about regenerative agroforestry is that you are growing multiple plants alongside each other. So you need to have an eye on your product pipeline further down the track. And that is why we're putting the NPD through. So the chia and the protein concentrate, that's in NPD. It certainly isn't at this stage being developed as a product commercially, but we're strategically keeping our eye on the 3-5 year gateposts in terms of the other products that we'll need to be developing.
Kostas, Nadav, any other questions for Angela?
Maybe a final small one. Around the logistics and supply chain side, how do you think about, if we're looking at emissions, how do you think about emissions when there's a product that is, for example, it's been grown in Mexico and needs to be transported around the world? So, kind of an end-to-end emissions point of view.
It's a really good question. And the thing I didn't actually say was that we are focusing our entire market at the moment on LATAM and Northern America. So our customers are North America, including Canada and Mexico. And we've done a detailed life cycle analysis on the business, as anybody who knows carbon-13 will know that's a rite of passage that you have to sit and do one of those.
Yeah,
so we've done a very, very detailed life cycle analysis on that. But longer term, we will be looking to ideally expand, and that we're hoping at that point, better things such as wind-enabled transportation will enable us to reach those markets. But the reality is, it will take 2 years for us to get novel food status for Europe anyway. So it's focus, hone in on that sort of LATAM US market, and it's huge in its own right? So there's a lot of things we can really do well before we have to tackle that particular issue.
Great, thank you.
And then I just have one last question. How did the protein sources that you're looking at now compare to other plant-based protein sources in terms of nutritional value, such as peas, soy, etc.?
Incredibly well, actually. So polyphenols and things like that, the nutritional value of the Ramon is proving to be extremely high, as is the chia. The challenge, and that's where all the laboratory testing comes in, is making sure that you don't lose some of those values with the processes. So what you want to do is optimize flavor and quality and structure, which is incredibly important, while also not losing the flavor piece. That's why it's still a work in progress. We have more laboratory work to do before that protein concentrate will be ready. But we're very confident from the indicative results so far that it will be highly nutritious.
Awesome. Then that's all of the questions I have now for Angela. Do you guys have any other questions you'd like to ask?
Yeah, all good.
Thanks,
Angela.
Everybody. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you for presenting, Angela. And it's time for us to move on to our next company of the night, and we'll hand things over to someone a little outside of the food industry and yet still kind of in it, Ryan with AEROPOWDER. Ryan, you want to take things away?
Yeah, sure thing. Hey, everybody. I'm just going to share my screen.
Perfect. And you'll have 5 minutes on the clock to tell us a little bit more about what you're doing with Byrd feathers.
Sure. I'm going to start the clock so I can stay on track. Hi, everybody. My name is Ryan. I'm calling from London, and I'm the founder of AEROPOWDER. And we're a startup, an early stage startup looking at the circular economy and surplus feathers. As Matt's alluded to, what's really interesting usually when people speak to us is they've never considered all the feather material that's generated by the food industry. It's a huge quantity of material. Poultry remains a very popular protein source. I know there's a lot of good work being done about the future of food, but for now, poultry is still on the up, low resource footprint, environmental footprint compared to other sort of meat sources. But we never stop to consider what happens to all of the feathers. And it's as I said, it's still in many areas incinerated, landfilled. Here in Europe, we do have methods to convert it into a low-grade animal feed, but it's pretty good in my experience, and we could be doing something a lot better with that material. So we've turned that, we have a process to convert that into the world's first thermal packaging material made from surplus feathers. We want to harness the already amazing properties of that material and turn it into a packaging solution that can replace items like expanded polystyrene that's commonly used in chilled deliveries. So thereby getting rid of plastics, but also dealing with a waste solution in a true sort of circular economy philosophy. I'll talk you through the process while the video plays. I have to skip forward in the interest of time. But essentially, yes, we take feathers and then process them into an intermediate fiber. We do have a patent on this process. Our efforts in this area are really concerned about optimizing this material for excellent thermal properties. I'll come into those in a second. But essentially, yes, we work with a manufacturing partner based out in Denmark. We can produce around 4 tons of product per week in a manufacturing run. And we've got now the expertise to sort of finish and package the goods at the end. So very simply, Plumo Liners, I have one of them here. You might be able to still see my face. They're soft, they're lovely, they're very, very good at insulating. They go inside a cardboard delivery box and will form a thermal barrier that means food or pharmaceuticals stay chilled during transport. And in this increasingly, e-commerce focused world, these items are very, very important as a sort of supply chain solution. Now, it really does work very, very well. We've compared Plumo against both the sort of incumbent, which is expanded polystyrene, but a number of other sort of more sustainable solutions in the market. In the top left there, you'll see a graph showing how long does the item stay chilled inside the delivery box. More time means less spoilage, less revenue loss, less angry customers walking away from your business as they get a very hot and disgusting piece of meat, food or whatever it is. So yes, Plumo can keep items chilled for longer, more than polystyrene, more than the sheep's solution here in the UK. And excitingly, the Temper Pack, which is in the green there, is a US startup doing great things, just raised the Series D, raised by Goldman Sachs out in the US. So we've got the beating of them, as well as obviously focusing on how we can have positive carbon impacts through replacing plastics. So we do have customers on the market, and apologies for the noise, because someone's supposed to be doing building work. But Plumo is on the market. We're just launching this week with our newest customer, Byrd, doing high-end frozen meals. So it's going well. We have a small team, myself as the founder, a few others. We've got Alex and Fleming as full-time, and still a few other part-timers. But it's still a small team, and we've got where we are today, raising through Crowdcube and various awards and grants. And now we're focusing on where do we go from here. We have a third-party manufacturer based in Denmark. Much like the previous presentation, we have many ideas of what we want to be doing and moving towards a pilot facility sooner rather than later with less Extantia and many other industries areas of focus. A lot of exciting work we're doing here. And eventually, at large scale, we want to pull back and focus on being a sort of technology and licensing company with our innovation everywhere, able to access that 10 million tons of material around the world and generating licensing sort of revenues that way. And the ask from us at the moment, we're raising a seed round. We're looking for £2 million to accelerate our growth and basically prepare ourselves properly for that pilot stage. Obviously, we've got a lot of positive traction. We're also leading a €2 million industrial research grant starting this week as well. So yes, we're looking for extra capital to boost revenues and get letters of intent ready for a pilot facility to move towards profitable manufacturing and the next stage of our business. And that should be 5 minutes.
Yes, it is. And the rooster is about to cluck. Congrats on nailing the pitch. That was super interesting. The company's fascinating. This is one I've been looking into as well, potentially for our syndicate. But first, I want to hand things over. Kostas, Nadav, do you guys have any questions for Ryan and AEROPOWDER?
Happy to go first. Thanks for the pitch. Really interesting. My first question would be about the amount of adaptation we need to have for different customers. So when assuming that we're still looking at the first application, that it's for the packaging, the thermal packaging, how much of an adaptation process is required to go from one client to the other or one application to the other?
So it depends what stage you're looking at. And one of the things we did very recently is understanding that when you're providing packaging materials, customization, sizing, shape, and density is all very important. We can do that now. And one of the things we can do, which is nice about our process, is because you're physically cutting the materials, we can take the offcuts and recycle them. So there's zero waste in that manufacturing side of things. What we do know is that we've done a lot of work on densities and the other things that may be beneficial per client. And with the equipment we have, it's a case of dialing it in and obviously just producing a different set of materials. The reason we've started with this packaging solution is that it lets us demonstrate a lot of things about the thermal properties of the material. So scaling up to do construction, for example, is less of a jump now. You're now making big plumos, thick plumos, large sheets to go on housing. And it's that kind of mentality where we're always look towards what's the next logical step and make sure your adaptations are stepwise rather than huge changes needed to jump from industry to industry.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Ryan, for the presentation. It was very interesting. So a few questions. Maybe to start off, can you tell us a little bit more about the inputs, meaning how exactly is the process of collecting the surplus feathers?
Yeah. I keep drawing back to previous discussions, but what we looked at is the whole process, right? Is we want to do something very new, very novel of taking this mass-produced material, and it's a circular economy question of how do you access it, how do you process it and clean it. So what is going to happen is you're going to eventually have localized collection sites or on-site processing and washing of that material, and probably moving it to a central location for manufacturing. So that will involve arguably a very glorified and fancy washing machine, a drying, and then a cutting process when you get to our product. Now, where we take this philosophy as a business across a whole is looking at that big question and saying, right, what can we do to prove things now? We still have work going on in that washing sort of area of our business, but that involves accessing very big businesses that don't really want to work with a small company on this little problem until it's ready. So we are intercepting pre-cleaned surplus feathers from the bedding industry. So we don't want to sleep on giant feathers that will stab us in the face. So we take that as a surplus. Our supplier currently will be putting those in landfill, and we use that to create Plumo as a product. It gets product to market and obviously does all the things that we need to do. And as we scale and move through our journey and development as a business, we will bring online the capabilities to source, these tons of materials from the poultry processing sites, and obviously, wash those within a short amount of time and get them into our production process. We have run a trial of 1 ton of tipping feather. That works very well, producing lovely material. So we're just really keen to get to that point at scale as soon as we can.
Good, thank you. One quick follow-up question. Can you further elaborate on the first customer that I think you said you mentioned?
Yeah. So
what exactly?
This all started from actually a major meal kit delivery business here in the UK. It was Gusto, actually. Our competitor to HelloFresh reached out and said back in 2017 even, can you do this for our delivery boxes? And we said yes, but they wanted 2 million units in a couple of years' time, and it was way too early. So we pulled back, and our first customer was an ethical butcher based in Oxford. It's a beautiful farm. It has all these eco toilets, which aren't as fun as to use, but do a good job for the environment. But they send ethical and organic meat produce nationwide around the country. So we started supplying them before the pandemic. There was a bit of an interruption, and now we're back on our feet and still supplying them. We found new customers as a bagel delivery business in East London who are sending out cream cheese and smoked salmon using our packaging to keep that cool. And By Ruby, the one I referenced, is a business that's sending high-end frozen prepared meals, kind of like the supermarkets here in the UK. You've got the ready meals. Imagine a very upper end version of that, frozen, and then sending out nationwide deliveries using our packaging, and that's going out now.
Thank you.
Have you got any pushback from end consumers? I feel like that could be one main challenge. My meal just arrived and it's surrounded in chicken feathers, and someone's a vegan, or they're not comfortable.
Firstly, for that exact reason, we've been sensible and targeting, obviously, for vegan and vegetarian businesses. This is not appropriate. Fully respect that. I have vegan meals for lunch all the time. That's all good with me. We are starting with meat delivery businesses and people involved in animal-based produce, be it full meals and these kind of things. And then the messaging in general is, I know I've talked a lot about feathers, and I always sort of hesitate when I say it, but we're a circular economy business. We're about reducing waste in society and replacing plastics. And we also push the messaging of we're already very used to these as luxury items in clothing and bedding. So trying to get that mentality across is how we bridge that gap, and making sure no one feels put out by what they're receiving in their packaging. And it honestly does look like a luxury type product as you receive it, so that helps as well.
Why did you decide to go first for food packaging as opposed to going straight for housing insulation, where you'd have larger sales, larger contracts? It would be much more standardized.
I think maybe if I had another go, that it's obviously possible, but I think as a first-time founder, learning the ropes as you go, accessing construction is this, you walk in and you suddenly realize how things work in the purchasing decisions, all these chains of sort of the architect, the person that goes out, I can't even remember all the names of them, but then also things like fire safety, how long it takes it's a very conservative industry. It's basically long story short. So very easy for us to walk up to business, knock on the door and say, you guys send this, would you like to use packaging? Let's get it going. And we'll build up that experience, that credibility, and then we'll be able to access some of the more difficult markets. For example, pharmaceuticals. So same sort of delivery system is being used all around the world for pharmaceutical last mile delivery. A lot of it is still based on expanded polystyrene. There is a higher bar to entry. So if we establish ourselves in the food industry for a bit longer, now we are having conversations with people in the pharmaceutical industry. So it's a case again of low-hanging fruit, what's easiest to access first, and we'll go back and attack construction and these things sooner rather than later.
Okay. And one last question from me before I hand it over to the other two would be, how does this compare on an insulation density? So for instance, if I want to, the bigger it is, the more it's going to cost to ship, the worse the climate impact is going to be.
Sure. So the way we measure it, and everyone generally is comfortable with this kind of thickness, is roughly 2.5 centimeters is the bog standard sort of thickness and size. And when everyone is at that thickness, Plumo comes out on top. So there's an argument that maybe if you wanted to and you're doing it right, you could reduce the thickness and therefore get more units in, more transport and keep the same performance, or you buffer and have extra performance with our product. So on a thickness and density perspective, we still come out on top.
That's great to hear. Kostas, Nadav, do you have any other questions for Ryan?
Maybe one final question from my end. So I think you mentioned that you're going to, that the next step is to build your pilot. So at what scale are you guys operating right now?
Yeah, so right now, I think if you look at our yearly revenue today, it would be, we're around about the sort of 35,000, 40,000 on sales at the moment, 40,000 K on sales. We manufacture batch production runs with our manufacturing partner out in Denmark, and we will continue to do that over the seed raise, but obviously trying to max that out basically. And once we've maxed that out, then the next stage comes the pilot facility where we'll do another raise, hopefully fund a lot of that with grants or debt financing or some kind of other less expensive capital. But that's also the exciting part where cost of goods becomes profitable and we can quickly move to a sort of EBITDA positive scenario with a pilot facility, letting us get further revenues, but also do all the R&D and all the other exciting sort of products and industries applications as well. And at that scale, by the way, we'll be looking to do about 1,500 tons of feathers just to demonstrate. It'll let us do about, insulate probably 5 million boxes over the course of a year. So again, it's not, people like HelloFresh are doing far, far more. But it'll be a start and it'll be enough to look at this pilot facility and say, I can see this, I can see how it works at scale. Who wants to build more of these all around the world, wherever there are feathers?
So that's when you start licensing then?
That's when we start licensing.
Okay. That was the last main question I had. Anything else, guys?
Very quickly on that point, we are already in discussions and we were considering licensing quite early in the US. It fell apart, not because of us, but the private company out there just had to rearrange some things internally. We would be looking initially at bringing Plumo to other areas via a subcontracted sort of situation, but that again establishes, product market fit, and then licensing is actually more of a please take over the reins rather than us sort of overseeing and partnering with you. But that's already in some discussions, and we hope to have a test of US-made Plumos within a couple of months.
Awesome. Then thanks, Ryan, for sharing. Thanks for coming on the Startup Tank, and doing a great job. Before we hand things over to our next presenter of the night, I just wanted to tell you guys a little bit more about the Startup Tank. So the Startup Tank, if you're just tuning in or this is your first time, we feature top climate and impact companies. So really climate focused, pre-seed, seed, sometimes Series A, companies that are changing the world, moving it forward and solving the climate crisis, kind of one sale, one transaction, one impact at a time. If you want to learn more, if you want to apply to pitch, visit thestartuptank.com. And if you're watching here on YouTube, be sure to subscribe, hit that subscribe bell and that little notification deal so that you can find out when we have upcoming episodes, which we have, in fact, July 25th at 5 p.m. CET, as well as August 4th and August 15th, same time. Visit thestartuptank.com/YouTube to subscribe. And if you want to learn more about us and what we do at the syndicate, that is forward.vc, the number 4 ward.vc. And now it's time to hand things over to our next company of the night. We've had a bit of a food theme, so why not keep it going? Sophia with Alt Atlas, you are up. Sophia and Alt Atlas, they're using AI-powered ingredients to make cultivated meat a reality. This one I'm excited about because I've had trouble giving up the meat, and I would definitely transition to a cultivated meat solution if I had one. Sophia, do you want to take things away and tell us about what you guys are doing?
Hello, Matt. Thank you for the opportunity. Sure. Can you see my screen and can you hear me?
Yes, okay. Loud and clear. Alt Atlas, you're on the clock. Let's go.
Perfect. So hi, I'm Sophia. I'm the founder of Alt Atlas. It's a pleasure to be here today. Alt Atlas, it's a company that will make cultivated meat a reality by enabling the scale-up of its production. So there is a problem. Cultivated meat is not scaling up at the pace we need. After almost a decade and billions invested, only 4% of the cultivated meat companies were able to reach the pilot capacity, and none the industrial scale. So what is actually happening? As the Good Food Institute, we also believe that cells are the main building block of cultivated meat. However, none of the available cell lines represent a solution to scale up. We are proposing a faster way to unlock this. As a first product, we are selling customized stem cell lines and a personalized support to help our customers scale up their production. Our cell lines are generated using our machine learning software platform that allows to control and predict stem cell behavior in vitro and at scale. With our software, we can help cultivated meat companies to move from the lab to a pilot scale in less than a year. So how does this work? First, we develop the cell lines and how to use them at scale. Second, we deliver the products to our users. Third, they test them in their production and upload the results onto our platform. And finally, we receive that data and use it to iterate on our product development. So this continuous improvement loop allows us to increase our client production capacity in 10 times per cycle. So we will enter the market next year selling to customers we have already identified. By 2025, our sales and expertise will enable our customers to reach industrial scale. And by 2030, with our help, they will reach cost parity with conventional animal meat, allowing us to reach 200 million in revenues. We will start by charging a flat fee, mainly for the cell lines, but by 2025, the business model will work with a subscription model based on production volumes. So there is competition, of course, but Old Atlas is unique in two ways. First, our proprietary machine learning platform allows us to deliver custom cells faster and with higher success rates than anyone else. And second, in addition to selling the cells, we help our customers incorporate them into their unique production systems to maximize viability and support the scale-up. So in just 4 months, we have built an ecosystem for success, including investors, our cultivated meat customers, and technology partners. In addition, we have concluded 2 proof of concepts and filed 1 patent in the US. So this is Old Atlas team. We have over 70 years of relevant combined experience in academia, in corporations, and we built a biotech startup in this field. Our team has developed computational strategies, bioinformatics software, established state-of-the-art stem cell lines, and pioneered the cultivated meat ecosystem in Latin America. So we are starting with the stem cell module, but the platform will consist of a plant breeding module and a food design module to efficiently produce novel and sustainable foods powered by AI. This will enable multiple revenue streams and to position Old Atlas as the industry lighthouse of the alternative meat and dairy industry. So we just opened a fundraising in which we are seeking 2.5 million in tranche, the first one to launch our first product and file for another patent. So I'm happy to walk you through our 2 proof of concepts and their combined potential to make cultivated meat a reality. I'm available to questions.
Awesome. Thanks for presenting, Sophia. You got it done in time. Congrats on surviving the tank. And now let's see if you can survive our investors. Kostas, Nadav, what questions do you have for Sophia and Old Atlas?
Sophia, thank you very much for the presentation. Very interesting, and you're operating as well in a very interesting space. I'd love to hear more about you. I mean, your background and how did you get to launch Old Atlas?
Thank you, Nmas. So I'm originally from Buenos Aires, from Argentina. I'm a chemical engineer. Started working in the oil and gas industry. Not too nice to say, but it's a very interesting industry. However, because of my personal, let's say, yes, my upbringing and being born in a developing and a meat consumer country, I have my different feelings regarding environment and animals. And also because as an engineer, I like to solve problems. When I get back in 2013, I got to learn about cultivated meat technology. I thought that this is an amazing technology that if further developed, it can make a difference and can be part of the change we need in order to have a more sustainable world. So by then, at that time, there was no cultivated meat companies in Argentina or in Latin America. I shifted my career to the food industry, worked for operations strategy in a food corporation. And while I was doing the second master in business, I decided to fund the first cultivated meat company from Latin America. After 2 years, the company dissolved, and now I'm with this value proposition with Old Atlas. Basically, I understand the field and the challenges that needs to be overcome. That's why I'm proposing the stem cell lines. We are a technology enabler. That is how we like to see ourselves. And it's not just developing stem cell lines, but also coupled with support to help cultivated meat companies scale up their production. So basically building up comprehensive solutions for our cultivated meat B2C users.
Thank you.
A question for me. I mean, thanks for the presentation. First of all, really interesting. Where are you standing in terms of development? So what are the next steps and how? I mean, you had a timeline, but just to elaborate a bit more, what is in each step? What will be delivered with this round of funding, and what are how long will it take until this is a commercial pilot scale?
Yeah, sure. So we participated in 2 accelerator programs, and with that, we were able, with the funding and their support, we were able to have the 2 proof of concept of the software platform and the strategy to build stem cell lines for the food application. For that, we filed a patent for both things. And basically, we are in a position now in order to launch in 2-3 months the software platform. So we built the bioinformatic workflow, and we are going to hire a software developer. We know what to ask him or her in order to launch the software platform. With that, and also with further funding, we are going to be able to have our own wet lab. So basically, in order to develop the strategy regarding the stem cell lines. Since we are a bit behind in terms of getting access to a laboratory, we are going to have services in order with a service provider in terms of having enough information to feed the software platform and to validate the software platform also with this information that we are designing the experiments, but also with users from the space, with fellow founders from the cultivated meat space.
Got it, thanks.
So Sophia, I have a question about your business model and the ownership or IP. So companies work with you and you help them develop custom cultured, basically cell lines for cultured meat production, and then implement those cell lines to find results and then share those results back to you. Who owns that data? And are you then able to sell those results and cultured cell lines back to other businesses, or is this kind of a one-off consulting deal?
No, it's not a one-off consulting thing. So basically, we are developing the stem cell lines for the food application with our proprietary strategy. It's a non-GMO stem cell lines. We are starting with the bovine species, and it can be applied to other species. So then we are going for the pig species. They are going to have our continuous sourcing of stem cell lines. What is custom is the protocols on how to use them in their unique production system. We are going to own the data, but it's going to be, of course, kept to each user. We are going to manage that data, and we are going to be able in 2 years from now to feed the software platform with enough relevant information, not just coming from the users, but also from our internal labs, to have the predictions for the artificial intelligence module. But basically, the stem cell lines are our property, and the protocols on how to use them in their production facilities is their know-how or their protocol.
How much does it cost you to develop a stem cell line, and how long does it take? And how long does it take general companies not using your system?
So it takes a lot. Actually, there is not a well-established stem cell line for the food application. So what you ask a stem cell line when it comes to food, it's to be highly proliferative and to be able to direct the differentiation into different tissues in an efficient way. So this is not something that is available in the market so far. Talking a bit about our competitors, so there are company providers of stem cell lines for other applications. So right now, cultivated meat companies are using what's available. If it's human, mouse, or some chicken cell lines, there is our main competitor, but they don't perform. It's okay to have, they are enough for a prototype, to develop a prototype, to be able to apply to a grant or to do a showcase, but that is not commercially viable for different reasons. It can be because it's from a species that is not eaten commonly. It can be because it's a GMO product or because it doesn't perform, basically. It doesn't produce enough cells before dying. So they are using what they have right now. The main competitor would be Roslin Institute from the UK. They are developing pig stem cell lines for the food application. However, we are providing, with our strategy, our cells are going to be non-GMO in any jurisdiction. And also we are providing this comprehensive service to help the users scale up their production.
Understood. And then your business model is basically 1% of sales. You said once the clean meat industry hits 25 billion, you would be doing 200 million a year in revenue?
Yes, that is correct. For the scale up services, by that time it would be, we are going to be hopefully far from the scale up service, so the scale up would have been concluded. And 2030 would be all about reaching cost parity with traditional animal meats. So it's a continuous improvement service, what we are going to provide, apart from the continuous sourcing of relevant stem cell lines.
Understood. 1% seems kind of small for your margins if you're facilitating that much business. I don't know, but that's just my opinion.
Okay. Yes, I mean, it's something that we don't want to, of course we can say that we can get more, but thinking realistically, I think that is what we can get with the stem cell module. We are going to have more revenues coming from other platforms regarding the plant breeding, which is expressing animal proteins in plants, like collagen in some species plant species we have detected, and then the food module. But as a first product, this is the revenues we are projecting for the cultivated meat industry.
Awesome.
Then that's all I have. Nadav or Kostas?
Listen, first of all, a few thoughts, and then I'll ask you maybe one final question on my end. Oh, I have lights went off. 1 second. Oh.
No worries, still looking beautiful.
Yeah, Kostas, maybe you go first.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to ask about commercial traction. So have you talked with potential customers? What are the stage and when you will be ready to directly work with them?
Yes, so we do have several LOIs signed with B2B partners. B2B technology partners. Either they are developing bioreactors, scaffolds, or media for the cultivated meat, and they want to test their solutions in our cell lines because cell lines are lacking, and also relevant cell lines are lacking, and in order to co-develop, but also with cultivated meat B2C companies, the users. So we are going to do a pilot. We don't need the wet lab in itself to have the wet lab, the stem cell laboratory, I mean, to have the pilot up and running. We are going to launch the software platform in 2-3 months, and we are going to start the pilot with their cultivated meat B2C users, basically improving their media or the stem cell line compatibility with the scaffolds. And then once we have in 4-6 months our stem cell lines, then we are going to provide the full service that we are looking to.
Great, thanks. Nadav, you're back.
Yeah,
you are under lights.
So one final thought and maybe a quick follow-up question. So first of all, at Nomea, we haven't invested in any cultivated meat or dairy company yet. Like others, we have been following, the trends and what's happening in the market. Let's first maybe zoom out a little bit. In alternative proteins, right? You have the plant-based, the fermentation, the cultivated meat. I think even, and maybe you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think even the alternative proteins, in the States, it's probably, 1.5-2% for meat out of the total market for meat, and maybe for dairy, it's much higher, maybe even close to 15%. When I think about cultivated meat, as an investor and the risks associated, so in terms of the regulatory approval, and I understand the argument, first of all, in terms of texture and the taste, the ceiling that some people think that, plant-based products will heat or have already heat. But in terms of the regulatory approval, I think there's only approval, I think in Singapore, but maybe I'm wrong, so correct me if I'm wrong here. And I think it's in process in other places like Europe, UK, and the States. So first of all, I know it's a broader question about the market, and I'm sure that many startups are asking themselves the same thing here. So this is the first question, just to get your your thoughts about this. And then the last question is about the funding. So if I remember correctly, you're looking for $2 million in investment. What would be exactly the uses for the round?
Yes, okay. So regarding the regulatory approval, yes, you are correct. Singapore is a jurisdiction that is open or has shown more openness to cultivated meat technology. So that's why the commercial, many companies are being located there, or at least they have a subsidiary there. Regarding in general, or at least my opinion, or what I'm seeing is that it's something that is going to hit the market. In terms of consumer acceptance, it will come to, because of all the benefits cultivated meat has. So basically, governments will respond to that, increasing the demand from the end consumer as well. And also it's a way for many, for the governments to have sustainable foods. So I guess it's an interest from what we are seeing from several governments. Singapore maybe first, the US as well, because they have been working with cultivated meat companies for a while now in order to understand the technology, because we need to let's say, teach them, or for them to get to understand the technology and what we are doing. So basically that is something that is happening right now with FDA and USDA. So the intention is there to have a regulatory framework in place. We are going, because we are aware of that also we can have, as the field can have certain struggling when it comes to novel foods. That's why we are developing non-genetically modified stem cell lines. It's a greater challenge. With my previous venture, we were developing genetically modified stem cell lines, but now we are aiming to produce this one because we are taking into account consumer acceptance plus the government. It would be easier to approve a non-genetically modified stem cell line and an end product, hence with that. So, and also, well, in Europe as well, even though the treatment with GMO, there has been like a lot of, in my opinion, misunderstanding regarding GMO foods and the tendency that if they are harmful for human consumption. But I think that I really believe that we are heading there. Like, we need to produce foods in a much more efficient way, of course, with taking into account the human health, of course. But so I see a good perspective regarding the regulatory approvals, because it's something that is a process that has already started. And regarding the fundraising, it's 2.5 million. We are doing that in tranches. The first is 500K. And the main use of that would be to set up a laboratory and develop the cell lines. That would take between 4 and 6 months. We have all the strategy on the technological side. We just need the funds to execute that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Sophia. Thanks for sharing and presenting. All questions done. Any questions from the audience? You can always post your questions in the YouTube comments as well. thestartuptank.com/live to tune in live for this or future segments of the Startup Tank. And of course, you can check out all the recordings there. Then if that's it for Sophia, I'm going to say thanks and I'm going to move on to our next startup of the night. Before we do, though, I wanted to just give a quick shout out to the presenting sponsor for the Startup Tank, Leva. Leva is a digital SPV that you can set up in seconds and have investors, whether you're a syndicate lead like us, setting up investments with LPs and really interesting and promising climate companies, or you're a startup looking to fundraise and bring together investors into one vehicle to simplify things. Leva's got you covered. It's fast, it's easy, it's digital, which means you can do follow-on and secondaries without lawyers. It means you don't have all of the extra paperwork and legal fees every year. It just keeps things simple, and simple is sometimes what you need in venture when it comes to going fast. Forward.vc/Leva for more details and to set up your first SPV, which will either be free or super discounted as long as you tell them you came from the Startup Tank. But We're at the Startup Tank, and the Startup Tank is about climate companies, not about SPVs, other than forward VCs. Syndicate, of course. So that means it's time for us to move on to the next company of the night. And here I want to hand things over to Andrew Joyner and EnMass Energy. They're doing some really interesting stuff over there in terms of the waste to value ecosystem, so to speak, and the digital supply chain. Andrew, are you ready to take things away?
Sure.
Awesome. Then you can share your screen, tell us a little bit more about what you're doing, and I will put you on the clock. Ready to go?
Okay. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate the intro, and thanks everybody for attending today. Nms Energy as a company and as a concept is mission driven to support the waste to value industry in North America and globally. But we use the phrase waste to value very broadly. The concept of waste to value really comes down to what it takes to build a circular supply chain and procure materials that are traditionally unpriced as commodities in the market. So I believe it was, I see the icon, but I don't see the name. Aero Feather or AEROPOWDER. We should definitely talk afterwards in terms of how you're building out your procurement networks. But yeah, Nms Energy was founded in 2015 as a project development company for waste to value projects, initially utilizing agricultural residues as a feedstock for electricity generation. We quickly realized after putting together a portfolio of energy projects and going to private equity that there was a significant market gap in the digitization of supply chains for waste to value projects and waste to value companies. There's a significant amount of finance, capital, and development happening on the project side of waste to value. This is RNG, food waste to electricity, even chemical recycling of plastics, for example, and niche commodity procurement around circular supply chains, basically. One of the things that we realized when trying to build our own projects was there's a fundamental economic problem that is not addressed when trying to build up the infrastructure required to support projects like these. And that is that if you're sourcing a material that has no value in the marketplace, it's not a traded commodity, it doesn't have a clearing price or anything like that. There's a fundamental economic problem that it becomes valuable only when you put out price signals saying this material has value to me and this is what the value is. Basically, every decision you make after that point has to be stacked against your operational costs, your procurement requirements, quality control, for example. So Nmas Energy has built that digital infrastructure utilizing a digital twin of commodity procurement to support the waste to value sector and the industry as a whole as it grows. We look at waste or unpriced materials as a commodity. That's a very big sort of step change from how a lot of organizations and project developers look at waste or unpriced materials. Waste is abundant, but there's a significant lack of transparency and oversight in terms of how it's moved, where it goes, what the costs associated with that movement are. And as a result, it's very difficult to stay within the economic bounds of a project supply chain when you're generating something of value on one end, but procuring something that has no clearing price or costs associated in the market. So our solution is to digitize this process. The current status of this process is it ranges from very complex with sophisticated companies trying to build internal software or utilizing a number of different softwares that all don't speak to each other, all the way down to paper-based ad hoc processes where a procurement manager or project operator is calling suppliers out in the marketplace and sourcing material and one-off deals. That is extremely time-consuming and inefficient. So we built a platform that can take that process and duplicate it many times to increase that operational efficiency and drive down the costs associated with building a circular supply chain.
I am sorry, Andrew, but your time is up. Can you just tell us
Wow.
quickly how much you're raising and
Sure.
the valuation?
We are currently raising 1 million at a 10 million valuation. We've done a previous seed round. We're considering this a pre-Series A round to support moving monthly revenue that we're currently generating into a recurring revenue structure.
What are you guys at revenue-wise now?
We generate roughly 40 to 45,000 per month in revenue, but only 1/3 of that is monthly recurring SaaS structured revenue. The rest is services and data reporting for individual customers.
But you're transitioning to more of a software as a service type model. What will that business model look like in the future?
That business model, I did not get through our product, but we have a SaaS product that's a digital twin of a supply chain that specifically solves all the problems that I spent far too long describing in my 5 minutes. And then we have a data report that basically provides market intelligence on the generation of waste, how it moves, where it goes, the costs associated with it. And this is specifically a level of transparency that nobody else has, and many people are demanding.
Understood. Nadav, Kostas, do you have questions for Andrew?
I think maybe if you could tell us a bit about the team, your background, how did you come across the problem? I'm sure you had it somewhere in the presentation. We didn't get.
I do. You guys can just usher me through the rest of my slides in the Q&A. Yeah, my background is I'm an economist and project developer, but specifically worked in public policy before moving to the private sector to support renewable energy development. My co-founder and COO is a niche business builder and bootstrap operator, and our VP of data is a math PhD that we hired away from a commodities hedge fund who has been integral in our algorithm building and data modeling. We also have additional data scientists from energy utilities, software engineers from the ag tech sector, and our current team is approximately 7 people right now.
Great, thanks. I have a few more questions, but I'll let Nadav maybe go first.
Okay, so thank you, Andrew, for the presentation. So you know, first of all, quick thought. I'm sure there's a lot of inefficiencies in the waste to energy market, or waste to value, as you call it. Can you try to be maybe as specific as you can in terms of the core of your platform, in terms of where are you tackling those inefficiencies, whether it's payments, is it access to certain data, is it transportation or scheduling, delivery? I mean, what are really those key things that you think that you're doing better than those energy providers can do by themselves? Because I think that's your value proposition, right? Because I guess that these energy providers can try and, you know, and do this process by themselves. But what you're saying is, no, come join our platform, and we can actually aggregate a lot of data, use better processes, and automate certain things. So I'm really interested in those core, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 5 things that you think that you're doing better.
Absolutely. We don't currently have payments on platform, but that is in our roadmap to support sort of a growing marketplace for connecting suppliers and projects. The first thing that we do that is our sort of claim to fame is data transparency and supplier intelligence, where suppliers, how much waste is out there. Traditionally, that's very difficult information to gather, and it's integral to any project that's operating with feedstock requirements generally. Our software specifically solves a number of operational problems due to the complex nature of running an end-to-end supply chain that's dependent on this material, that's unpriced, and generally hard to track, basically. So there are operational aspects of it. We don't provide transportation. We provide the digital footprint of the movement of the material that provides opportunities for operational efficiency, improvement of your supply chain, improvement of your supplier base, and the material that you're sourcing. So there's a significant room. There's significant room for improvement of any project that isn't already doing that, and I don't think any of them are doing that, frankly.
Thank you, Andrew. Kostas, back to you.
Yeah. So one question from my side is about the, if you could elaborate about the business model with a bit more numbers in terms of how much would that cost, how much value you can generate, and how do you see the financials kind of progressing?
Sure. Yeah, right now, our data products are selling at roughly 15,000 a report. Traditionally, the alternative to our data product is you hire a niche consultant that takes 3 to 4 months to gather all the data and present it to you. We built an algorithm that does that same work based on our waste modeling and commodity models. The algorithm does that in about 2 hours. So we charge the same as a consulting firm, but can do multiple data reports on a weekly basis that really reduce the development time in a competitive market for projects originating and being developed. The operational software is a traditional SaaS platform, but the amount of money that is moving from either suppliers to projects or projects to suppliers, depending on whether they accept tipping fees or pay to procure material, is a couple of $1 million per year per project generally. So we have priced our software platform relatively aggressively low, so we get more projects on there and then start operating as a marketplace where we take on platform payments and take a percentage of the money exchanged on platform.
Maybe a follow-up to that. Beyond the reports for the SaaS product, do you have the option to upsell different things? Are there different functionalities that you can develop further down the line and upsell?
Absolutely. One of the things that we do for customers that have been on our platform long enough for us to verify who their suppliers are and what they're actually sourcing and valuing, because quality control of material is a huge issue, and tracking that back to a supplier is very difficult when you're sourcing from a sort of non-transparent marketplace. Once a customer is utilizing our platform for a period of time, we offer them sourcing services, brokerage services, connecting them directly to suppliers, connecting material directly to their project, which brings in a significant amount of revenue for us. But again, that's not strictly recurring revenue, even though it is large chunks of revenue that we have, pretty healthy margins on 10, 20%. So those are additional services. We also provide some level of benchmarking of projects for private equity on our platform. there's a significant amount of finance tied up in these processes like net 30, net 60 that we're able to sort of underwrite if all the activity is happening on our platform. There are a lot of options and services that could be provided once this entire process is in a single platform.
Got it. Thanks.
And did you mention competitors at all, Andrew?
So right now we mainly compete with basically a combination of 5 different softwares that don't speak to each other. So you have a CRM for your suppliers, a TMS following trucks around, and maybe an Excel spreadsheet tracking test results from material you're sourcing, inventory software, that sort of thing. None of those softwares talk to each other, and none of the people responsible for those activities can talk to each other around the same process. So all of those things happen within our platform, and everyone can stay aligned with the process and the targets and the goals of the company. The alternative beyond that, if there's not any software involved, and traditionally there isn't, it's strictly pen and paper. It's pen and paper and a phone, trying to call as many people as you can to find material that you're looking for. So there's not really a lot of efficiency in that process, and that's one of the first things that we work to digitize.
Understood. I think that's everything I have. Kostas, Nadav.
Yeah, I'm covered. Thanks.
Maybe one final question from my side. I mean, can you tell us a little bit about the challenges that you guys are facing or seeing in terms of the future?
Sure. So really, the energy industry and waste management are not the most innovative. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone. So we've really had to make things as simple but innovative as possible. So a lot of times there are organizations where there's top level buy-in from the CEO, but the operational people on the ground that would be using our software and communicating across platform are not incredibly computer savvy. So we've had to deal with a little bit of sort of white glove or hand holding, really focus on ease of onboarding and tutorials within the software, where I think if we were focused on industries where there are a lot more software tools and software solutions, that might not be such an uphill climb in terms of ease of onboarding and ease of use. But that's been the big one that we're focused on from a tech perspective.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you, Andrew.
Awesome. Then, Andrew, thanks so much for coming, presenting the company and everything that you're doing. And of course, founders, I would recommend posting in the YouTube comments. I'll be in the LinkedIn comments as well, your email address, contact information in case anyone wants to find you. But of course, all the information as well is generally the first name at the domain name. If you're a founder, you pretty much get the good domain names. Let's move things on now to the last company of the night, Raise Green and Franz. Franz, you want to take center stage and tell us a little bit more about how you're trying to deploy more money into investments that actually matter?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Matt. And hello, everybody. My name is Franz Hochstrasser. I am the CEO and co-founder of Raise Green. We are the climate investment platform. And I worked on the Paris Agreement, negotiating as a US State Department staffer. And investing in climate really is the largest economic opportunity in history. But the question is, who's going to own it and who's going to benefit from it? And investors want impact, but there just aren't enough bankable projects right now to invest in. So we're seeing big scale ups in the amount of capital flowing into the space, but it's not necessarily flowing to where it's most impactful. So in the US alone, $110 billion is the size of the distributed energy resource market that's needed by 2025. That means 70% of commercial buildings could have solar only 3.5% of them do. And so that's a huge gap we see. At the same time, you've got 85% of individual investors that want sustainable investments. 99% of millennials want them. So our marketplace at Raise Green, which is invest.raisegreen.com, allows us to connect climate companies with investors that are seeking impact. For the climate companies, they get flexible financing terms to access capital. They get credibility by having structuring support through our software, and they get access to customers as well by building a brand of community engagement. And for the investors, they get to use our SEC and FINRA registered marketplace to access this new ESG asset class, and anyone can invest, accredited, non-accredited, and institutional players. So we've built technology that fuels this marketplace and cuts the soft costs in structuring these types of offerings through standardization. We believe it's the first business process automation software specifically focused on climate tech. And what that means is that somebody can come to our marketplace, we can collect their variables about whether they're doing a project finance company or a climate tech startup. We apply templates for securities, for corporate formation, and we output a financeable project that we can list on our marketplace so investors can access it. And we found that those investors are accessing it. So our investor base is growing fast. We have a profitable LTV to CAC ratio, and we've added about 40% month-on-month investor growth since launching in July of 2020. And this is William Mac Bowen, our investor of the month. He says voting with your dollars is a great way to have an impact. It really adds up, and he feels optimistic when he does it for the future that he's leaving his children. So our traction to date is 15 securities offerings since July of 2020. We've done 1,100 trades, 2,100 accounts, everything from $100 investors like Mac Bowen to $400,000 investors. We've mobilized more than $4 million, nearly $5 million through the marketplace so far. And we have an active pipeline of $11 million of solar, energy efficiency, climate tech companies that are moving toward listings. We've also worked with some of the premier climate tech companies like Block Power and the Connecticut Green Bank. We make money off of a 5% success fee on every dollar raised and a 2% security stake that we take. If it's debt, it'll pay out like an annuity. If it's equity, we could benefit from the upside of an exit or eventual growth of the company. And this market is exploding. So last year, the sustainable investing market nearly doubled. It's $330 billion in the US right now, according to Glenmead. Again, we're focused on that $110 billion of US distributed energy resources. And we've carved out a plan to get market share of $1 billion through the Raise Green marketplace by 2025. So how do we do that? We build on our product market fit to date. We have 18,000 signups on our newsletter. Turning those folks into investors is the next step. We continue to automate and build out our software as a service, expand our template library, and shorten the time it takes for somebody to get through the process of creating one of these listings. And then repeatability is crucial for our success as well. So we work with channel partners like Onyx Renewables, who we have an MOU with, and we're part of the Department of Energy's Credit Ready Solar Initiative as well. My background is in climate and clean energy at the White House, the State Department, and then went back to graduate school at the Yale School of Environment, where I met my co-founder, Matt Moroney. He's a data scientist, environmental chemist by training. Our chief investment officer, Jackie Logan, has 20 plus years of capital markets experience, most recently at Goldman Sachs. And our CTO, Charlie Byrd, has 7 previous software exits in his career. We're at 10 full time right now, and we want to take it to the next level, but we need your help.
I got to cut you off now, Franz, but I think this was the last part anyways.
Perfect. Yep. Raising $2 million. Looking forward to your questions. Thank you.
And thanks for the presentation. It's an awesome company in terms of what you guys are trying to do. I've got questions, but first, Kostas, Nadav, you guys want to kick things off?
Fantastic. I'll jump in first. First of all, thank you for the presentation, Franz. I think you've done a great job. So great presentation. Quick disclosure to Matt, Costas, and the other people on the call that Franz and I spoke once last week, and I was already impressed with him and Raise Green and the mission. So you know, one quick thing that comes into my mind, and then a quick follow up. So first of all, you know, it's a lot about the numbers here in terms of what you're trying to create, because you're trying to create a marketplace. And it's not easy. I'm not sure. I mean, obviously, you know, the demand is there. There's almost already $40 trillion in ESG. You know, it's clear that the younger generation, millennials, Gen Z, you know, there's no doubt that demand is going to be there. I think it will be a somewhat competitive space. And the fact that you're having an impressive CAC to LTV ratio, I think it's I think it's definitely very important. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you're attracting new investors?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the key is to grow that investor base, and what we found is there's a bit of a rule of thirds around it. Every time we bring on a new issuer onto the marketplace and they're selling securities for the first time to raise capital, they usually bring about a third of the investment from their networks. And so those folks get introduced to Raise Green through a brand that they are already interested in. So that's crucial for us to continue to bring on new issuers. Secondly, you know, we have a growing investor base and a consistent inbound strategy to acquire investors. So we're writing blogs, we're doing podcasts, and we're building networks through organizing. I was the Obama field organizer back in 2008. So we're plugging into, you know, local climate activist chapters across the country and working to build trust that way. And then the third portion actually is really more of a blended finance approach in that we're going after some institutional players that are thematically interested in the area, but can write bigger checks. We are, you know, actively in an outbound way making introductions with money managers and impact-oriented investment funds that want a consistent source of deal flow.
Thank you. And one quick follow-up question: in terms of the numbers, what's the average investment size in terms of the return?
Yeah, our average investment size historically is about $4,500.
Pretty good for crowdfunding.
Nadav, we cannot hear you. You were trying to speak. We cannot.
Like we said at the beginning, technology is great, except when it sucks. I'll take over for Nadav then. So one question I have, Franz, is how do you deal with almost negative selection bias that you see generally in crowdfunding and crowd equity, where the companies that can't clear market with VCs and angels then come to the crowd platforms to go after unsophisticated investors or dumb money?
Well, so I think that may have been the case kind of early on as equity crowdfunding was getting its feet here in the US. I think increasingly, you know, as popular accelerators like Y Combinator turn to crowdfunding as an option, and founders also, whether you're doing a, you know, climate tech company or you're developing a community scale solar or clean energy project, are taking kind of agency into their own hands by structuring deals in the way that they want to see them presented, and then giving their supporters an opportunity to buy into those. So I think you know, it's as exciting of a time as ever to be in the space of being able to give those tools to you know, entrepreneurs and heroic climate founders that want to deliver projects with real impact, to kind of take back the agency that you know, investors often have had it historically.
Maybe
Understood.
if I, sorry, Matt. If I can jump in with a question, can you talk us through the kind of operational burden? So I guess there should be a lot of compliance issues, legal issues, etc. That should be a significant burden. How do you go about, not having a huge operational expenditure while making sure that everything is done properly?
Yeah, excellent point. So we are SEC and FINRA registered, which means we're a regulated entity, and so and then on top of that, we seek impactful investments. So we're adding our own screening of projects in addition to what the SEC requires. The key for us is automation. So that's why we've invested early into the software, and we call it the originator engine. But effectively, what that can do is create asynchronous due diligence for us. So the developer or the entrepreneur goes through a guided journey to construct the document sets that we know that they need. 80 or 90% of those are templates that we have set out in advance. And then, the additional 10 or 20% is what we have to end up reviewing at the end. So that really condenses the time that my staff spends diligencing deals, and just focuses it in on the impact as well as the viability of the investment.
Got it.
Guys, can you hear me now? Is that okay?
Looks like somebody else has a question too. So one of the questions that I had for you, Franz, was which area or which vertical do you see the most traction currently happening on Raise Green? Is it solar wind park? Is it wind parks? Is it solar? Is it startups? Where do you see kind of the future for growth?
Yeah, so we're still very young as a company. We've done 15 of these deals, and where we've seen the most traction thus far has actually been energy efficiency. So a lot of the issuing companies find it as a nice source of low cost debt, and the investors, I think, find it as a nice source of yield as well as impact. And so that's been an area where we've had early traction. We're especially excited about solar, which is coming on with more and more projects recently. And then we've really just opened the aperture to include climate tech companies as well, raising rounds. And so there's increasing interest from them now as well.
Great. Franz, can you hear me now?
Yes, you're back.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm back. I've been switching headphones here right and left. Okay, good. So I mean, first of all, I'd love to hear maybe a little bit more about the team, because I think you guys have an impressive team. So if you want to give us a little bit of background how all of you came together, and then maybe afterwards I'll ask you another quick follow-up question.
Sure. Well, so after I came out of the Obama administration, I decided to go back to graduate school. And Matt, my original co-founder, and I met on our very first day of class. He's a scientist, and I'm a policy and sort of finance person, and so we really hit it off right away in very complementary ways, and collaborated on a number of projects: solar price dispersion, building mobile air quality sensors, fun stuff, which ultimately led to starting Raise Green. We came across Jackie about a year after that at the Climate Week in New York. So she's full-on New Yorker, has spent her whole career on Wall Street and really wanted to get into stuff that was more heavy on the impact side. And so we convinced her after about a year of recruiting her to join the firm as a co-founder. Charlie Byrd joined us after the Techstars program. We did the Future of Finance program with ABN AMRO and Techstars last summer. And Charlie's been an integral part of the tech side of our team. We also have, Cambridge engineer on staff, a former VC analyst on staff. We've got some great, business professionals, former Morgan Stanley, Michigan Business School, really smart people working really hard. So excited about our crew.
What's the biggest risk to your business? What could hold you back from success?
I think the biggest risk, honestly, outside of resources right now, in this challenging market, really is not capturing market share fast enough. So brand awareness, is crucial for us, and that I think comes through, a considerable outbound marketing campaign and effort, and then being able to convert that efficiently through investing in tech and growing the tech apparatus that we have. So I think it's more so than anything, resources at the moment, but very quickly, brand awareness and market share.
Are you worried about the economic implications of what's happening on your investor base and people cutting off their clean investing? And with everything that's happening, it may affect retail investors especially.
I think we all are, but yes, I think we saw ESG themed funds and sustainable funds remain fairly resilient through the pandemic. Who knows what the future holds in terms of this period of potential contraction of the markets, and certainly a shift, but we've seen that actually it's leading to some people coming to us as an alternative to public equities as they see those pulling back sharply. This is a non-correlated or sort of negative beta asset in comparison, in that even despite interest rate fluctuation, it's still an option that offers diversification, and also the impact that comes along with it.
One question from my side, last one, is how do you define the level of risk that you're willing to take, right? Meaning, how risky a business can be and still be on the platform, given also the fact that typically the lower the amount an investor is, or a user is investing, their sophistication might not be very high, and you might have people investing their income or part of money that they cannot easily spare on securities that definitely involve some kind of risk.
Yeah, Kostas, thank you for that question. So as a regulated entity, our first responsibility is to protect investors, particularly since we're working with retail investors as well as accredited and institutional. But so FINRA has its own rules about the amount of a net worth or income that a non-accredited investor can put in. So there are caps, but certainly, any investor shouldn't invest any amount that they aren't comfortable potentially losing. And that's the case generally with investing, but in this case, like you say, it's even more critical to be protective of. For accredited investors, they can put in as much money as they want, and that's up to them to manage the risk. What we do, we're not financial advisors, but we are very careful about what we do put onto the marketplace to ensure that it not just meets the bare minimum of what the SEC requires, but that it also meets our internal business standards. We have something called the RAISE model. So we look for revenue, ambition, impact, that's both social and environmental. And so that's kind of at a high level the screen that we're using to identify projects.
And maybe to follow up on what, sorry, and maybe to follow up on what Kostas asked. What's how much time usually do you guys spend on due diligence and screening projects? And let's say how many projects you're looking at? What's the conversion ratio between how many projects you're doing the certain due diligence process and looking into versus how much you're actually getting into the platform?
Yeah, so to date, we've screened about 300 deals, and we've let on 15. So that, it's about a 5% conversion rate. And much like the prior speaker, most of those deals we've been screening manually from the outset. So the diligencing software is something we've only just started using internally, and we'll be rolling out externally as we get through the seed round. But in general, to do that manually, it takes about 3 months to move a project through the whole process. with the software, we can get it down to a week or so for our staff time, which is a giant source of efficiency. But yeah, I mean, these are SEC filings, so we have to ensure that they are properly disclosed to protect investors.
Thanks.
And then that was my follow-up question as well, is do you have any type of set metrics or threshold in terms of how specifically you vet companies on the platform? Because the one challenge is the only thing that's better than 100 companies is 100,000 companies. So because the more you're closing, the more investments you have, the more cash you're getting. It's all kind of, more is better, regardless of quality, as long as investors put money in.
Yeah. So that's the seesaw of a two-sided marketplace. Is we need to both build trust with our investors and ensure that they are finding deals that they're excited about, and that they have appetite for, and then similarly, like you said, fuel the engine to hit our revenue goals and growth goals. And I think that as we utilize the software more effectively, we add to the template library and make it simpler as a tool for entrepreneurs and project developers to get onboarded quickly. We can get much more deliberate and get a higher pull through of projects as that becomes efficiencies of scale kick in.
Understood. Nadav, Kostas, anything?
All good. Thank you, Franz.
Then yes, thank you, Franz, and thanks to all the startups who have presented, shared hopes, dreams, challenges, everything. I know it's tough getting up there and getting in front of investors and sharing your spiel, but your founders built in venture scale companies, so you signed up for this, so it's only a pretend. Sorry. Hopefully you get a lot of volume and action from this as well from other investors who are tuning in. But now it's time for us to go into the last segment of the Startup Tank, and that is the startup of the night. And this here will pick Kostas, Nadav, myself, the companies we really found to be the best, the most interesting for us. So I can let you start, Kostas. Who are the top one or two companies that you're most interested in and why?
Sorry, let me unmute. So I think, quite a few interesting companies. If I had to pick two, I will pick two, not one. I was interested in what Atlas is doing, mainly because it's a very interesting industry, and it's very difficult, very competitive in, at the level of what the alternative protein companies are doing. But if you go one level up, where you are working and you are helping, and you can work with all the different, from a business point of view, working as a supplier or as a partner for alternative protein companies, that's interesting. I understand it's a very challenging problem to solve, but I would definitely be interested to understand the tech a bit better and understand how it works. So, but if it works as presented, I think that could be potentially quite interesting. That's the first one. And then the second one, again, from the business point of view, I think Raise Green can be very interesting in allocating capital to the right resources and interesting businesses that are solving real problems. And it's something that, it's a marketplace. It's a business model that has been tried and has been tested before with good and bad results. We've seen both. But hopefully, if an experienced team incorporating all these learnings that you can have from previous similar models, I think can be very successful financially.
Nadav, you're up next. Who are your companies or company of the night?
Great. I'll start off by saying thank you guys for all the founders for the great presentation. I must say it was very interesting. and all of you guys are trying to solve very important problems. So that's already great. You know, I'll share my thoughts about two, and then maybe we can go and each one can say is number one. I was impressed with Nmas Energy. I'm far from being an expert in the waste to energy or waste to value market, but from the little that I know, I think there's a lot of inefficiencies in that space. The problem, you know, the challenge that Andrew mentioned about a lot of the energy providers and some of the clients not being tech savvy, it's probably a real challenge in terms of onboarding and sourcing new customers. So this is probably something, but it's also the opportunity, I guess. That's where the inefficiencies come from, and that's why they're not using great platforms, allowing them in terms of the all the digitalization of the supply chain. So this is one. The second one, I'll go with Costa's choice. I think that Raise Green is also very interesting. You know, a marketplace play. It's an interesting one. It's not an easy one because usually the main challenge is marketing. You have to spend quite a good money about marketing. You have to reach a certain scale. You always have to look at what is your customer acquisition cost versus your LTV. So it's not an easy business model, but it certainly have potential. When we think at Nomea about climate impact, here, you know, there's a different, because, you know, we look at CDR companies, at hydrogen, and here, you know, the climate impact is more about the additionality. How much new additional capital from investors that wouldn't either be able to invest in climate projects would be able to do. So this is something that I don't know if Franz and his team have done the job in terms of quantifying and understanding the climate impact. Because I think this is very important. There's no doubt there's tremendous demand in the States, but also elsewhere, tremendous demand, younger generation, but I think also from the older generation, to be able to invest in climate projects. I think now Raise Green is mostly focused on solar, if I understood correctly, but I believe that they'll be able to scale to other projects. So this is so I think these are the two on my end. But maybe Matt, I'll let you maybe share some thoughts, and then we can each one maybe pick our favorite one.
Absolutely. And to add to what you said about Raise Green, I would say Raise Green is definitely my top or one of my top two. And to add, not only does it deploy more capital, but as we've seen with crypto and blockchain, once your money's in on something, you get more in on something. So once people have invested into the climate, they seem to care more, talk about more for saving the climate. So I think you could have a double whammy of people putting their money in and then putting their mouth and their actions where their money is, so to speak. So I was a big fan of Raise Green and what they're doing, especially as my background is marketplaces and growth hacking. And that's kind of a business that I understand well and know how to scale and grow. So I would give them alongside with, I'm a big fan of what Alt Atlas is doing. I like picks and shovels businesses where it's much easier to sell the picks and shovels than it is to mine for the gold itself. I think those two are probably my top startups of the night, but the AEROPOWDER solution of insulation, I find that very, very interesting as well, when you're able to turn something of waste into something of value, especially when it is such a large scale. So I think in that order, but based off of what everyone said here, it looks like we have 3 votes for Raise Green as either number 1 or number 2, which in my mathematical book would put them as the startup of the night. Do we have a consensus, folks?
Yes, I agree, and I think I would have gone with Raise Green as my number 1 as well. But I'd like to emphasize again, you know, thank you for all the other founders who are doing amazing things in the climate space.
Yes, thank you to everybody for presenting and everybody for, let's face it, just putting your ass on the line and trying to solve the problem. If you're here, you could have had a better job making more money with less hours, less stress, more time for the family. And instead, you're trying to change the world and getting beat up about it. So thank you, everyone. Franz, you want to say something real quick?
I'm floored. Thank you so much. Really delighted with the experience, and thanks so much for having us on the Startup Tank. anyone can invest in these projects. Go to invest.raisegreen.com, check them out, and would love to hear from folks about our round as well. So thanks so much for the opportunity and for the honor.
Absolutely. And thanks to everyone else for presenting. Now, a quick thanks to Kostas and Nadav. Thanks, guys, for coming on and helping judge the show. Where's the best place for people to connect with you and learn more?
I can go first. I mean, you can always send me to kv@extantia.com and happy to chat further.
Me too. I'm flexible. Either email, and then it's nadav.steinmetz@nomeinvestment.com, but this is quite long, so maybe LinkedIn would be easier than just my name.
And for us, you can find us at 4ward.vc, the number 4ward.vc. You apply there, you'll apply automatically to pitch on the startup tank. You'll apply to our syndicate. We unfortunately can't accept all investors. We can only accept accredited investors. And this is by no means a solicitation, but we've got some really interesting companies we're looking at in case you want to come and say hi and check us out. Forward.vc. And this whole program, of course, all of the startup tank, all of the past episodes of the season as well have been brought to you by Leva, the best way to set up an SPV. It's digital. It gets rid of the lawyers, the headache, the paperwork, the yearly fees, the just tediousness of setting up an SPV, of doing follow-on, of doing secondaries. Forward.vc/Leva for more details and to discover what the venture industry should look like. And this has been another episode of The Startup Tank, the show where we get the world's top climate investors alongside the world's top climate founders, and we put more money and interest into the climate space as a whole. Thanks, everybody, for attending. Thanks to our investors for taking part in judging, and thanks to our awesome founders for putting it all on the line. I'm your host, Matt Ward. I guess I haven't even said my name until now. Well, my name is in the name of the syndicate. We invest in companies that move the world forward. And that's what you guys have been doing here. If you like this, be sure to hit that subscribe bell, subscribe on YouTube, thestartuptank.com/YouTube. And of course, we would love for you to apply either as an investor or as a founder for future sessions of the Startup Tank. You can find all the information and more on the website. And now it's getting late here in Europe. It's dinner time, so to speak. So thanks everybody for tuning in. Till next time, cheers.
Thank you very much.